And now for a different perspective on this Supreme Court case of the access to abortion medication mifepristone, I want to bring in Kristen Waggoner, the president, CEO, and general counsel for Alliance Defending Freedom, an organization, a Christian legal organization that represents anti-abortion groups like the Alliance for Hippocratic Medicine, the group that was behind today's case. Kristen, we just heard the head of Planned Parenthood talk about how a ban on this medication would jeopardize women's health across the country. Your response to that?
The FDA said to the court today that no one has the right to be able to challenge the FDA's action. And the FDA betrayed women and girls when it removed common sense, long-standing safety protections for women, including just simply having an in-person doctor visit. And then it told doctors and hospitals to handle the fallout. The FDA's own label says that 1 in 25 women are going to have to visit the emergency room just because they took this drug. And up to 7%, according to the FDA's own statistics, say that they'll have to have surgical intervention as a result. I think that we want to remember that this is the same FDA that approved opioids for chronic pain and told us that there would be a low risk of addiction.
When anti-abortion groups wanted to challenge the FDA's approval of this drug, they chose not to challenge it in Maryland, which is where we are right now, and where the FDA is also headquartered. Instead, they challenged it, as you know, in Amarillo, Texas, which didn't even have an abortion clinic. How do you respond to critics who say that you were simply judge shopping for your best way to challenge this at the Supreme Court?
That's not at all true. We represent thousands of doctors who are in this litigation and a number of associations who are based in different places throughout the United States. And one of our lead doctors who actually has had to treat women, including unconscious women who have come into the ER as a result of severe complications, who lives right near where this lawsuit was filed. I think that it's important for the American public to understand that even as recently as 2020, the FDA said in writing in a formal statement that ensuring in-person visits by doctors when these drugs are taken was not only minimally burdensome to the patient, to the woman, but also necessary to ensure that these women don't suffer severe complications.
Well, those examples that you just cite are really contrary to when pressed today, Erin Morrow-Hawley, the law professor who argued against the pill, she was not able to identify a single physician who had directly experienced a conscious violation because of these rule changes. You were there in the courtroom. Do you have anyone who's actually been injured by this pill's approval?
Oh, absolutely. Our doctors who have filed declarations in this case have said, and it's confirmed by the FDA's data, that when an in-person doctor visit was removed, actually they've seen an increased number of women who have presented with severe complications. And our doctors in this case have had to help those women in those situations. In addition to that, the FDA itself recently has said, and even in the data most recently in 2021 says, that emergency room visits will increase as a result of their decision to not only remove the in-person visits before a woman is induced into labor in her dorm room or in her home, but in addition to that, that thousands of women have suffered severe complications because of taking this drug.
I am curious to get your reaction to Supreme Court Justice Gorsuch, who, as you know, is known to be a conservative on the court, who suggested that this was a small case that shouldn't have been brought to a national level.
I don't think that's what Justice Gorsuch suggested today. He did express concern about the scope of a nationwide injunction as opposed to ensuring that the remedy in the lower court was tailored to the plaintiffs that filed the case. In this particular instance, though, the associations that were represented here represent thousands of doctors across this country. I think something else that's very telling about what happened today was the admission by the drugs manufacturer, who said their primary motivation in taking the stand that they did was simply to increase their profits. It's to sell more drugs. We, again, need to understand that in this case, the evidence is not even contested. The FDA's own statements say that, for example, since the in-person visit has been removed, that patients will be expected. In a study, it went up 12.5% that women would have to experience unplanned medical interventions as a direct result of the FDA's involvement. And in fact, 300%, there's been an increase of 300% of hospitalizations since these common sense safeguards were removed. We're simply talking about, one, ensuring that
I just want to go because you seem to think that I mischaracterized Gorsuch's comments, and I want to quote. He said that this is just a, quote, a handful of individuals, and that even if they were injured due to the pill, the remedy being sought here, a nationwide restriction of the pill, is disproportionate and broad.
Yes, he's referring to the relief that was provided at the lower court and the breadth of that relief and having that relief be tailored. And that's what he's talking about, is the remedy of the injunction. But in terms of what's actually happening in the case, the remedy is something that the court considers at the back end. The FDA's position has been that they can't even be questioned on the data that they cite in their own labels. Right now, if a woman goes out and buys mifepristone and takes this drug, what they will find out is that the label itself warns them of severe complications and that 1 in 25 women are going to have to visit the ER as a result. And ironically, in this, one of the restrictions that was removed by the FDA was an obligation of physicians and others to report serious adverse consequences. That's shocking that the FDA would support that kind of a removal in terms of just a basic safety standard.
Kristen Waggoner, President, CEO, and the General Counsel for Alliance Defending Freedom, we thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.